Whether through design or haplessness, an actor embodying a character can summon an ire in an audience that few other art forms are capable of. From maniacal villains to veritable missteps, there are so many modern-day film characters who have left audiences with a sour taste in their mouths. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with the 10 most hated movie characters in recent history. Number 10. Dodge Landon in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. The recent Planet of the Apes trilogy was a surprisingly fantastic collection of films, and one of the things that they did extremely well was blur the lines of whose side the audience should be on. Those lines were a lot more distinct, however, when it came to Harry Potter alum Tom Felton's Dodge Landon. In the film, Felton plays a young man working at his father's monkey sanctuary, who needlessly and consistently berates and abuses the primate residents. Felton, perhaps still playing within type after his years as Draco Malfoy, is deeply and understandably dislikable as a cruel and bafflingly angry man who has no business working in a place looking after creatures he so obviously hates. When it becomes apparent there is something different about Caesar upon his arrival, as is the classic bully move, Dodge zeroes in on him as the main target for his cruelty and abuse. Dodge Landon does not have a great deal of screen time in the film, but even with such a short window, he managed to burn himself as a figure of hatred into the minds of film audiences, who no doubt erupted in cheers collectively when he finally got what he deserved. Number 9. Terence Fletcher in Whiplash. One of the best films of the last decade also delivered audiences one of the most brilliantly detestable characters in the history of cinema. J.K. Simmons' Oscar-winning turn as frighteningly intense music teacher Terence Fletcher is a titanic performance of a man so sure of his purpose he will cross every line he has to. Fletcher is a vicious bully who constantly demeans and abuses his students in an attempt to find the next great jazz musician. It is his expertise and assuredness in his methods that makes Fletcher so believable and in turn so incredibly resonating and terrifying. Fletcher is a caricature of the sort of person that so many people have dealt with in their own lives, and his excessive breaking down of Miles Teller's Andrew is hard to watch because in a sense it is so identifiable. J.K. Simmons is at a career best here in a stunning performance looking at the abuse of power and reasoned bullying. Fletcher is that rare breed of a character who audiences can't help but hate, but also can't seem to look away from. Number 8. Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. The Social Network was truly the best film that no one knew they wanted. David Fincher's shockingly excellent Facebook thriller gave the world the inside track on the creation of the biggest social media site of the era, and also a new perspective on its creator Mark Zuckerberg, and Fincher did not shy away from the flawed nature of the young billionaire. Perfectly played by Jesse Eisenberg, Zuckerberg joins the film as nothing more than a socially awkward but incredibly gifted computer genius who happens upon the ingredients to $1 billion idea. However, the following success sours his character to such a point that the audience cannot help but turn against the protagonist. Zuckerberg frequently makes selfish choices and confidently declares his genius at any given opportunity, and the disdain quickly filters into the audience the more they see of the introverted tech wizard. His betrayal of long-term friend Eduardo is a true low point for the character and served to truly sway the audience away from Zuckerberg. An excellently constructed character piece which led to so much hate towards its subject, and for good reason. Number 7. David Duke in BLACKKLANSMAN. Perhaps an easy choice given that Topher Grace played David Duke, a Grand Wizard in the Ku Klux Klan, but even outside of this pretty substantial black mark on his character, David Duke is a truly revile-worthy piece of Spike Lee's excellent BLACKKKLANSMAN. Perhaps the most striking element of Duke's reprehensible character is the casual nature with which he spouts his racist leanings. Duke is a man who fully believes that people who are different to him are also less than he is, and he does not shy away from sharing those thoughts with anyone who will listen. David Duke is of course a real person to boot, which just magnifies the hate an audience sears onto the screen every time Duke starts with his hateful vitriol. It has to be said that the character is a huge departure for Topher Grace, and he should be commended for his ability to embody such an inherently dislikable and inhumanly hate-filled person. David Duke's casual racism and inexplicable success in the political sphere combined to make a true monster of cinema that audiences couldn't help but hate. Number 6. Jill in Jack and Jill. In truth, I don't think any of the poor unfortunate souls who had to sit through this hot mess of a film would begrudge me picking anyone from the roster of dislikable characters that featured in it. But it seems most fitting to hone in on the character around which this entire misguided concept was built. Jill, played by Adam Sandler, is loud, obnoxious, needy, and most offensive of all, deeply unfunny in every conceivable way. A character with any of these other traits in a comedy movie needs to carry some sense of comic relief to get away with these obvious flaws. But Jill is such a full, flat-on-your-face attempt at comedy that she comes across as completely and utterly unbearable. The film is largely derided as one of the worst movies ever made. Rightfully so, and a huge part of that unwanted burden sits squarely on Jill's broad shoulders. Jack and Jill is the lowest point in the career of a man who's made low points something of a speciality lately, and Jill is the epitome of that struggle, a truly and rightfully reviled character. Number 5. John Fitzgerald in The Revenant. 2015's The Revenant is perhaps most famous for being the film that finally bagged Leo the Oscar. However, the visually stunning pioneer flick also boasts a brilliant performance by Tom Hardy as the detestable John Fitzgerald. When DiCaprio's Hugh Glass is seemingly mortally wounded by a grizzly bear, Fitzgerald is quick to jump at the opportunity to display his overwhelming selfishness and cowardice by insisting they mercy kill Glass and leave his body behind. As if this wasn't bad enough, Fitzgerald eventually stays behind with Glass at the promise of money before promptly attempting to smother him and then killing his half-pawny son when he tries to stop him. Fitzgerald is just incredibly and painfully self-serving, as he displays in this film time and time again, and the audience can't help but turn on him as quickly as he turns on the hapless Hugh Glass. Hardy is an exceptionally well-liked and well-respected actor, and therefore the levels of hostility he manages to garner in this film speak volumes of his ability. John Fitzgerald is a vicious, cold-hearted monster who somehow manages to come off worse than the grizzly bear who rips a future Oscar winner to shreds. Number 4. Lex Luthor in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. For the second time in this list, Jesse Eisenberg features, and this time it's for all the wrong reasons. Whereas Eisenberg's take on the Facebook creator was intentionally unlikable and hard to watch, his poorly considered take on Superman big bad Lex Luthor accidentally achieves the same effect. Eisenberg is a fine actor when given the right material, but he was quite simply woefully miscast in this disappointing superhero effort. The outcry upon his casting mainly focused on the fact that he was simply not intimidating enough to pull it off, and this sadly proved to be the case. But more than that, Eisenberg's Luthor came off as childish and unhinged in all the wrong ways. The maniac energy with which the role is played seems to be an attempt at evoking the same sort of energy that Heath Ledger brought to the Joker, but it sadly could not fall any flatter in those efforts. Batman vs Superman's Lex Luthor comes across as hugely unlikable, irritating, and deeply unmenacing, and cinema audiences the world over simply spent his screen time collectively groaning and rolling their eyes. Number 3. Todd Alquist in El Camino. El Camino was a fantastic final send-off for everyone's favourite former meth addict Jesse Pinkman, with the film also providing audiences with an even more fleshed out version of everyone's least favourite Nazi nephew, Todd Alquist. Todd has the added bonus of having built up a bit of a reputation as an awkward and cold-hearted wannabe drug pin during his time in Breaking Bad, and a particular standout scene in the desert, yes, that one, really cemented his legacy as one of TV's most unlikable characters. Jesse Plemons does a fantastic job of carrying that reputation to the big screen in Netflix's El Camino, and even somehow manages to add to it. Between strangling a house cleaner to death for seemingly no reason and the more in-depth look at the physical and mental torture he inflicts on poor Jesse, Todd is one of the most reprehensible characters to ever feature in film. Todd has a misguided sense of an apparent friendship with Jesse while still holding him captive, and it is this deluded sense of still being a good guy that adds to Todd's truly loathable demeanor. Number 2. Jeff Gillooly in I, Tonya. I, Tonya is a biopic concerning the life of infamous ice skater Tonya Harding, and despite the story concerning the public's sour perception of the Maverick Olympian, it is Sebastian Stan's Jeff Gillooly who really steals the soured limelight. Sebastian Stan is most famous for portraying the Winter Soldier, and Jeff Gillooly is the furthest departure from a heroic turn that exists. Gillooly is an unhinged, abusive, and often pathetic man who seems to leap at every opportunity to ruin Harding's life with a poorly planned scheme or violent tantrum. Stan Dan does an excellent job at creating a character who so rapidly descends from love interest to monster. As a co-narrator of the film, Galooly attempts to plead his innocence in the whole Nancy affair and claims to be far from the violent abuser he has been painted as. However, as the truth unfolds, this unreliable narration only serves to add to the laundry list of reprehensible characteristics that Galooly possesses. A violent and cowardly man who takes no responsibility for his disgusting actions, Jeff Galooly is one of the great villains of modern cinema, and the fact that he's based on a real person makes it all the more difficult to watch. Number 1. Edwin EPPS in 12 Years a Slave. 2013's biographical period drama 12 Years a Slave is a gut-wrenching tale of racism and slavery in the 1800s, told from the perspective of a legally enslaved African-American violinist, Solomon Northup. The film is grim and hard to watch at the best of times, but it's at its darkest during the points when Michael Fassbender's vicious slave owner Edwin EPPS graces the screen. EPPS is a cruel and sadistic slaver who purchases Solomon Northup from the much less odious William Ford. EPPS is the very embodiment of all things wrong with slavery, as he treats the unfortunate people living on his plantation as nothing more than property and playthings that he can do what he will with. EPPS is at his most detestable in relation to his treatment of Patsy, ironically considered to be the favoured slave, as he routinely rapes and beats her while allowing his almost equally dislikable wife to frequently abuse and embarrass her. EPPS manages the impressive feat of being easily the most detestable slaver in all of cinema, and I suppose he does deserve some credit for that. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.